very high frequency that accompanied it. Rumor has it that this very track could somehow influence moods and thought patterns. Of all the tracks in the game, only the theme that plays when first meeting the demonic entity can be found on the internet today. Searching for playable roams or cartridges online is futile because none exist. In fact, most of those who have played it directly haven't sought out looking for it, but rather stumbled upon it by accident. According to a first-hand account, certain copies of various Game Boy titles contain misfortune in its entirety. The means for accessing it through these games vary, but typically involve exploiting glitches or using cheating devices. Although some have detailed what they had done to treat misfortune to start, attempts by others using the same methods had always failed. Another common observation was that many of the sprites in Misfortune had been copied from the exposed games. Misfortune is known to be integrated into the following: The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening, Pokemon Red, Spud's Adventure, Fuji Karat, and Atelier Paris. Once again, thank you so much, Dylan, for having me. I really had a lot of fun making this. And if you are dedicated bros or that's watching this, don't forget to subscribe to Dylan Nightfall, because this dude really deserves it. Best of luck in the future, bro.
And that's the story. There's also a secondary piece in which he often recounts his experience knowing a friend playing the game who died an awful death shortly after having played the game in what looked like a spooky incident. But the author being sure it was the game that caused it. I personally really like this one because it has a ton of screenshots and footage to go alongside it, and the game itself causing misfortune as well as being a part of other games is an interesting idea. It's a cool urban legend. Although again, it's not very scary to me, it's just more interesting conceptually. But then again, I think that's more than enough with most of the video game faithful. Which, my goodness, there has been a lot of this year. Perhaps we ought to take a break from those and look at one a bit different. I mean, we are in a dark tropical jungle. I don't know a lot of creepypastas that take place here, but I do know a story that takes place in a dark forest. Anansi's Goat Man story. So I always heard about this one back in the day, but I'd never taken the time to read it for myself. Which is a shame, because it's one of the best new ones that I've read from this tier. It's pretty simple. It starts off as a green text story like this. Quote, be 16, be black, and have family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land down in Huntsville. Uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers they put out in the woods for hunting or camping. Down south, cousins suggest that we go out there to camp. No, I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they tease the fuck out of me, collect food, kill a pig and some chickens, and bring necessities to camp out for a few days. Get to the camp, and it's obvious something is weird. We think nothing of it and unpack and go down to the little creek and swim for a few hours. All of a sudden, some older white guy and a white teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm, said hello, and asked us what we're doing this far back in the woods for a few hours. All of a sudden, some older white guy and a white teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm, and says hello, and asks us what we're doing this far back in the woods. Tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and say we're camping out. He tells us we need to be real careful out here. Stick together. There was a big animal in the woods. His son, who is my age, asks if we can stay and hang out with us. He says, okay, unquote. The story then turns into normal prose, and as the author notes, it's more difficult to write the story in the green text format. So our narrator, 5 of his cousins, 4 of their friends, and a white kid named Tanner, all ranging from ages 15 to 17, end up camping next to one of the trailers. What then proceeds to happen are various strange events surrounding the intense smell of copper filling the air and then suddenly going away, before a few of them trail off into the woods, only to run back to the rest of the camp immediately after in a cold sweat, piling everyone inside the trailer. Brewster, one of the cousins, explains that they had seen something out there rushing towards them. Something Tanner had apparently also seen before a few days back, which they assumed was perhaps a big cat or something. Another cousin, JR starts going on about how he went to school with a native kid that was telling him about the Ghost Man, and based on their description, that's what he thinks they saw. But no one takes him seriously, though. The story then goes on, quote, "Nothing else weird happens that night. We stay another night. For the main part of the night, nothing happens. At about 1 in the morning, we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. As someone is finishing some pretty spooky story, I don't remember what it's about, the smell is bad. It's so fucking strong that one of the girls literally starts vomiting. I stand up, and you can actually feel how clammy the air is. I say we should get inside, and this isn't right. We should have just fucking left. We all go back inside, and we're standing around. My cousin just keeps going on about how it's the Goat Man, it's the Goat Man. My cousin Rooster tries to shut him the fuck up, and all the while I'm just feeling like something is wrong, and I can't figure out what the fuck it is, unquote. Well, that feeling wasn't unwarranted. Shortly after making a batch of 12 hot dogs, so everyone can have one of the cousins remarks how it's not fair that our protagonist gets 2 of them, which he then argues with him about for a little bit, about how everyone got 1, and that's when he and a few others realize something, and immediately have everyone rush out of the trailer. They then count how many people there are, 11. They then start asking how many people are in that trailer. And that's when they realize everyone remembers 12 people being in that trailer the whole time. Panic then ensues as they realize how crazy this situation is. Was the 12th person. Skipping ahead a bit, several more incidents occur involving the group splitting off to go and get a rifle, and this thing, which they are now calling the Goat Man, starts taking the form of others in their group, stalking them, watching them, acting strangely. This all eventually leads to a face-off when they do finally get a rifle and fire into the woods, challenging it. Ungodly screams that sound like multiple animals blaring all at once echo through their now locked trailer until it all eventually goes quiet, and all of them, after a while, start to nod off, hoping that this is all over. But Tanner had been watching the whole time with his rifle in hand, only pretending to be asleep when he saw it happen. Someone walked out of the trailer bathroom and then proceeded to lay down in the middle of the trailer. He watched to get up a few times and laughed quietly before laying back down. He didn't dare alert anyone or dare to shoot at it for fear that it would then instantly go mad and start killing everyone in the trailer all at once. At least for now, though terrifying, it only laid and stood there. Tanner only let them know this detail, what he saw when they all left the trailer that morning, one member of their party trailing behind them before eventually slipping back into the woods. And that's the story. But the way this tale is told really makes it feel like a buddy relaying a real-life scary occurrence him and some lads went through. The use of language and the general tone is realistic and engaging. I absolutely love the story, and it didn't need half of the people dying or meeting bloody ends or for anyone long-term trauma afterward to be effective. Just a very creepy and mysterious occurrence with something no one could quite understand. There are a couple leaps in logic and some unfortunate pitfalls the story falls into on occasion, but overall I would recommend it. It's a pretty good story. Tiki Toby. So we obviously couldn't go a tier without at least one cringy Jeff the Killer ripoff. I mean, come on now. And this is without a doubt one of the most popular ones of its time, and believed by many to be a far superior version of the Jeff the Killer formula. So, is it? Well, let's dive in and find out, shall we? So our story starts off with a rather long description of Toby's mom for some reason, before we then shift focus to Toby, the titular killer teen of this feature. You see, Toby is pretty upset because he was recently in a car crash with his older sister. He survived, but she unfortunately did not. But also, you see, he's different. Toby has a condition where he is completely numb to pain. Never before has he felt himself get hurt. He could have lost an arm and felt nothing according to this story, which is pretty crazy. But then things get worse for Toby, because it turns out he also has Tourette's syndrome, which caused him to tick and twitch in ways that he couldn't control. So, that's pretty bad. But wait, it gets worse. Because Toby has Tourette's syndrome, he is also bullied at school. In fact, he was bullied so often and consistently, they had to be homeschooled instead. But triple wait, it gets worse. Toby also lives with his somewhat understanding mother and, you guessed it, his drunk, abusive father, who physically, mentally, and emotionally hurts them, and who didn't even go to his own daughter's funeral because he was too drunk that day. So yeah, things are pretty. Oh shit, son, did you think I was fucking done? On top of everything else, Toby's also now seeing visions of the Slender Man outside his bedroom window, and this has been causing him to hear voices in his head and go into states of complete lack of control and blackouts. Now, I present all of this to you because it's presented in much the same way Clockwork Your Time is Up did. Fast, furious, and front-loaded to the point that the story is practically screaming at you to feel bad for this tragic backstory fella who you just know is going to kill his dad later and then become a proxy for Slender Man. Oops, I spoiled the next 25 minutes of the story. If this exact chain of events is at all a surprise to you, then you haven't been paying attention very much. Tiki Toby is just as formulaic and silly as the other stories of this ilk are. Although I will give some kudos, I sort of like that it's Slender Man turning him into a proxy by feeding into his natural anger for his father. It makes it much more
This assault will deliver a strong blow against the
serial
Empire.
killer that can't be
Ready
stopped.
yourselves,
Because he
and may
feels
the
no
Force
pain
be with
and
you.
is being used by Slender Man as a rather apparent very soon.
We must secure the area by capturing Imperial positions. All units, attack.
Crazy, and that means that they can now make hundreds of bullets. Anyway, in the same fashion as Jeff killed and many others I've shown here on this iceberg, Tiki Toby ended up being a cute toy for all of the door. To be fair, he probably was designed in sort of a evil boy looking, which, by the way, I'm not like hating on the evil boy look. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that was clearly the style of these serial killers. Anyway, many also enjoyed pairing him up with the Clockwork character as well, since their stories are so similar, which, well, to me, if that isn't one of the worst things you can say about a story. But beyond that, I actually really like who also didn't like Jeff or Clockwork, which is so weird, because having read all of these seeing the story, personally, I'd say I enjoy all of them. It's sort of ironic since they are very fun. They're just not very well written stories. Sort of in the same way that I like a lot of slasher movies. There are some very well written and very there's also a fun physical junk food that is kind of cheese, but I love it all the same. So I guess my problem is I get to find a really interesting, well-written Jeff the Killer type story. They're all just sort of trash. But hey, at the very least, I would not say they're boring, so they got that going for them. And what's interesting is the creator, Toby Lee Castaway, has since sort of retaken his character and asked that people stop making fan art of him. That he plans on doing something more with the character, and that it's no longer at all creepypasta related, which I can sympathize with, especially if he isn't proud of the story these days. But hey, I will actually compliment this. The character design of Tiki Toby has never been one of the better parts of the story and character. That mask, like it's always smiling, the goggles, the muted colors, it does look pretty cool. It's really something more character. At any rate, I wouldn't know more talent than the others, but that really is all there is to the story. Tiki Toby has a tragic backstory, he ends up going crazy through Slender Man body, he kills his dad, and then ends up becoming a crazy serial killer, others such as that's pretty much all there is to it. Tiki Toby isn't the worst this time, and maybe he's better than some, but not much in my opinion. Mr. Woods. third. This one being one of the very first ones that I listened to. First to the story starts like this. It's another original CD in the 90s called Mr. Mix. It's mainly a fighting game similar to Mario games. You get the password in the box to make a chef and your Mr. Mix ingredients to a bowl. Unlike most fighting games, however, this game is composed for having requirement for each level, but being as low as 10 on level 1 and as high as 85 by the third. By level 5, the requirement reaches over 500, effectively making it impossible to proceed any further. The story goes on to describe that there are no grounds for progressively louder on or how the second and third level of the screen will fall before the hair dryer playing in the background. The story goes on to describe how, quote, most children who played the game were having vivid nightmares of Mr. Mix, speaking with a quiet, raspy voice, right, quiet about something. However, memories of what it was. One psychologist saw being stirred by the sheer amount of terror on their faces. They counted, three children broke down years in the process, begging for their parents to stay. However, no direct relationship between the suffering determined by these feelings, because not all children suffer the same adverse effects. Unquote. The game apparently fell into relative obscurity. Still, the story rhymes. The hackers got a hold of the game and started digging through it. Using hacking software, they managed to bypass the game's code on the most possible level. What they found, apparently, was a strange disturbing caused mechanism with the expedition altogether. Apparently, the level science files the user's System32 directory to the point that once RAM is almost completely filled. And these files are apparently pictures of people with horribly deformed faces, appearing to scream in pain and agony, their eyes bleeding, and their outer layers of skin torn clear off in multiple places. If you try to delete any of these files, then the computer will crash and blue screen, causing permanent and irreparable damage to one's user's hard drive. However, eventually some hackers found out that a lone byte apparently made the ROM trigger this, and if you took out the one byte, then you could actually see what the final level of the game looked like, which the story that goes on to say, quote, unfortunately, all the original hackers declined to discuss what they saw in the final level. All of them became extremely paranoid and reclusive, refusing to talk about anything related to the game, and showing astonishingly extreme symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Most of them ceased to be able to form coherent sentences within a week, and within a month, all of them were missing. All remaining copies of the game were destroyed. To this day, no one knows what was in that game that caused them so much psychological damage. Maybe it's better that way. 2 years after this incident, a man was arrested after trying to kidnap an 8-year-old girl from a grocery store. Through DNA and fingerprint analysis, the man was identified as one of the original hackers who viewed the final level of the game. He was wearing a white chef's hat and had a look of unspeakable malice and insanity on his face. When interrogated, the man would only say one thing: I'm Mr. Mix. Unquote. So, yeah, it's not the best. In fact, it lines up with a lot of random video game creepypastas, especially the dramatic ending with the hackers all having the PTSD over playing the 6th level. Like, anytime one of these bosses does this, I can't help but laugh. Like, imagine you're playing Silent Hill, and you suddenly PTSD because you saw some blood and stuff. It's just so dramatic and dumb. I could understand messing someone up if there was some dark legal stuff in the last level or something like that, but it almost implies that they got possessed by the game's characters, I guess, so it's clearly not bad. Still, I do have some major nostalgia for this one. I think that's because it was the first one like this that I had ever come across, and it opened my mind up to what other stories could be told through scary video games like that. And I won't lie, at the time I seriously wondered if the story I was listening to was a little bit real. I know, maybe I was a little dumb in the moment, but I didn't know what a video game creepypasta really even was at that point. Hey, at least it's an original game. I gotta give it some credit for that, I suppose. And finally, for our last story this tier, we have one of the more highly regarded creepypasta. I'm a search and rescue officer for the U.S. Forest Service. Quotes, I'm a search and rescue officer for the U.S. Forest Service, and I have some stories to tell, unquote. That pretty much sums up this not one, and not two, but entire collection of creepypastas about a search and rescue officer, or a SAR, relating the many bizarre, creepy, or just sad or slightly off-putting findings he had come across in his time working this job. It's altogether 8 parts and written by Carrie Hammond. It was published on Reddit under the username Search and Rescue Woods, originally being posted to the No Sleep subreddit in August of 2015, with its final update in December of that year. It really is an assorted collection of creepy stories, all tapping into something more deeply mysterious.
No, fuck no.
Especially this Minecraft world, Sax actually is producers in it too. We have Kiwi in it also, so you should like join. We also have Station in it. Shush. Especially this Minecraft world, Sax actually is producers in it too. We have Kiwi in it also, so you should like join. We also have Sensational in it. Shush.
Okay, I see your point. How the fuck did you hit that? I'm smart, you're fun, I'm big, you're smart. Holy Matilda quote. Why is there no one in this game? I'm fucking 3-barring on Germany. German thing, how do you constantly 3-bar on Germany? Makes no sense. I'm smart, you're dumb, I'm big, you're small, I'm right, you're wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, holy Matilda quote, bro. She's on Death Star Games, gonna be fucking dead. For some reason, no one's grinding co-op on double XP. I don't say it's worth it for half of them anyway. Oh. So this was the Death Star game I was supposed to play. And now look, we're not 3-barring, we're not on fucking Australia servers, wherever this game wants to take me.
Eerie. Now when I say 8 parts, each part contains several short to more extended stories. So altogether, you're getting a ton of creepy, sad, or disturbing stories, all having to do with being a search and rescue officer out in the woods. The very first one opens like this. Quote, I have a pretty good track record for finding missing people. Most of the time, they just wander off the path or slip down a small cliff, and they can't find their way back.
Search and
The majority
rescue.
of them have heard the old stay where you are thing, and they don't wander far. But I've had 2 cases where this didn't happen. Both bothered me a lot, and I used them as motivation to search even harder on the missing persons cases I get called on. The first was a little boy who was out berry picking with his parents. He and his sister were together. Both of them went missing around the same time. Their parents lost sight of them for a few seconds, and in that time, both the kids apparently wandered off. When their parents couldn't find them, they called us.
Oh,
We
shit.
came out to search the area. We found the daughter pretty quickly, and when we asked where her brother was, she told us he'd been taken away by the
Fuzzy man.
She said he gave her berries and told her to stay quiet, that he wanted to play with her brother for a while. The last she saw of her brother, he was riding on the shoulders of the bear man. It seemed calm. Of course, our first thought was abduction, but we never found a trace of another human being in that area. The little girl was so insistent that he wasn't a normal man, but he was tall and covered in hair, like a bear, and that he had a weird face. We searched the area for weeks. It was one of the longest calls I've ever been on, but we never found a single trace of that kid. The other was a young woman who was out hiking with her mom and grandpa. According to the mother, her daughter had climbed up a tree to get a better view of the forest. She never came back down. They waited at the base of the tree for hours, calling her name before they called for help. Again, we searched everywhere. We never found a trace of her. I have no idea where she could possibly have gone.
Oh, what codes?
Art of
Oh.
Every post is filled with stories like these. Missing people being found in strange places in the woods, children being abducted, some living to talk of a mysterious person talking, others not being so lucky. And then there are the staircases. Quote, on just about every case where we're really far out to the wilderness, I'm talking
Dude,
30
why are
or
there so
40
many?
miles,
What the fuck? I don't even know a
someone will
fucking
find a
thing.
staircase in the middle of the woods. It's almost like if you took the stairs in your home and cut them out and put them just right there in the forest. That's about the first time I saw some, and the other officer just told me not to worry about it, that it was normal. Everyone I asked said the same thing. I wanted to go check them out, but I was told very emphatically that I should never go near any of them. I sort of ignore them now when I run into them, but because it just happens so frequently, unquote. As the parts go on, the tales grow darker. The tales of strangers, men who can scream like a cougar, reverberate in the air. Of body horror, a consistent theme of bad shit happening to kids, eldritch abominations, amongst so much more. All of this is delivered by an officer who is fairly jaded at this due to his overexposure to it. It doesn't get any easier, and still haunts him to be engaging. Yeah, this is yet another day on the job, sadly. Tones make it extremely entertaining reading. Descriptions of the torment of some of the people he meets or the things he hears or sees is crafted masterfully and never ceases to tease the imagination with some truly terrifying images and ideas.
I'm stuck
Go
down.
on, but honestly, it would take at least 30 minutes to go over it all. And again, I think you guys ought to check it out for yourself. In a way, it's almost an iceberg of its own. I mean, I guess it's not that much, but it's still a lot. Enough so that there's bound to be something that unnerves you amongst all these stories.
Keep it up, kid. A Jedi Knight.
Hey, look up.
You know why people, when you play Luke, they use just entire force ability on just one person. No idea why. Oh, it's the kill by Vader. The spawn there.
It's frigid cold, as a matter of fact. Let's see the ants. Maybe a bit of a freak monster. It's not even I'm
The princess has joined us.
All the It's fucking bad.
Strange people's shadows before it changes again. God knows where it is now. The pit itself may change the whole scary thought. Persistent nightmare.
Wow,
Founding my EXE author. My curiosity.
Should be enough.
Pasta concepts that really should have been brought up on this iceberg by now. Zalgo, more of a horror-based meme than an actual story of any kind, is, as the Creepypasta Files wiki puts it, quote, Zalgo is the brainchild of Dave Kelly, aka Schmorky, a Flash animator and something awful dude.
Dude.
Comics on a
I'm fucking strafing Death Trooper just overruns me.
Spread
Too good, bro.
People making their edits of
His ass a collapse now.
Zalgo comics, writing creepypasta stories about him, and continuing the lore. According to Schmorky, Zalgo's abilities only affect comics, cartoons, and illustrations, and not reality itself. Though this idea has been drifted out of favor with more recent stories portraying Zalgo as a more powerful demonic being. Now, while I could go into a lot of detail about this meme's creator, Schmorky, as it's kind of a tale all of its own, how interesting they are. It might be going a little too off topic for this video right now. However, these edits, both photo, comic, cartoon, and video game related edits of Zalgo-fied characters became one of the most prominent visual styles of creepypasta scene. It is kind of easy to see why. I mean, it's just giving a character black and red eyes, maybe some fake gore, or chemicals, or just something. So, the Zalgo-fied. In most creepypastas that were written about the mysterious Zalgo, it usually played out something like a Lovecraft sort of inspired story stylistically, but honestly, it's these images that are really Zalgo's last effect. Knights and the princess will invite us over for a picnic, eh, Luigi? I hope you made it.
Jedi Knight. You're doing pretty good.
With how many pastas would be inspired by it, such as some My Little Pony pastas that are coming up very soon, many Lost Episode pastas. Even if Zalgo wasn't directly in the story itself, you would often see the images that accompany these stories as Zalgo-like in appearance. And then of course you have Sonic.exe, perhaps the most popular of them all, which again looks like a Zalgo ad. Something which the original author tried very much to get away from with his shitty sequel and remake, but many of the .exe game makers noticed this connection as well, and there are many that have tried to make Zalgo more important to the Sonic.exe story and even other EXE games, him being the reason all of these otherwise innocent or fun games are turning so dark and gruesome. They are basically being corrupted by him. And thus, EXE games are essentially an evolution of Zalgo edits. There's no but understanding its influence on creepypasta and its aesthetics and the like, I think is pretty cool. But now, on to our first official entry, the showers. Starting out, we have what is without a doubt one of the best creepypastas ever written, and another personal favorite of mine, maybe even in my top 5 favorites of all time. Written by Dylan Sindelaire and later released altogether as a novella, The Showers is one of those creepypasta stories that marked a bunch of acclaim at the time, originally being 2 parts before Dylan would later expand upon the story. The pasta opens with
Like 4 levels, 4
following
levels again.
paragraphs,
4 or
which set the
5.
mood for the long journey ahead. Quote, every area in all parts of the world has those area-specific urban legends that just refuse to die. A haunted asylum on the outskirts of the city, or a creature that lives in the nearby woods, or a ghost that haunts a lonely stretch of road outside of town. There is always a common thread within the tales. No one has ever been to these places, seen the creatures, or witnessed any hauntings with their own eyes. There are members of every generation who will proclaim they know someone whose brother's best friend's sister went to that haunted house with 13 floors that used real blood and snakes and spiders. It's so scary that no one has ever made it all the way through. Those same people will swear by these stories without ever being able to provide a shred of evidence or a name of someone simply because everyone around here knows that it's a true story. Storytellers eventually pass the tales on to their children, who modify them just enough to keep up with the changing times, and so the cycle continues. I'm as skeptical as anyone when it comes to these stories, seeing as I was like a junkie when I was younger, constantly searching for terrifying stories about whatever area of the country I was living in at the time. I made up and spread stories about haunted pizza parlors in New York, my cousin's encounter with the Jersey Devil, or how my grandfather encountered a feral, human-like redeeming creature in the woods of Colorado. I even broke the one rule of these stories by putting myself in them, just the guts in hindsight, because I had to make sure that I always told them the same way. Surprisingly, no one ever called my bluff. I like to think that I made some wonderful contributions to various urban legends around the Midwest and Northeastern states. I haven't been around long. There's always a surge of joy whenever I wander the halls of school, and with one of my classmates retelling my stories to another one of their friends, adding little bits here and there. A massive game. I mean, of course, the story. But I stood my ground whenever someone asked me about them. I would even manage to act a little bit, speaking with a shaky voice, or looking scared, or count a situation that I supposedly experienced myself. I suppose this aspect of my childhood has led me to my current predicament, which I will recount in full. From the internet to take from what they will. I've laid this little introduction sort of.
No idea. I'm not on this account, and I muted it on my other account because it's just annoying. Just yap around like random brain rot things. Anyway, just keep doing it. Mute the group.
The way this pasta opens up is plain and simply perfect from not only building up a disturbing story to follow, but also tying the narrative and textually through urban legends and the passing of this story onto us, the reader. From here, the tale sees our narrator talk about his social studies teacher from one of the many schools he went to throughout his life. Mr. Mays is his name, and how he was different from other teachers. He never talked down to the kids, the freshman class, and would often be in the know of modern pop culture references in life. Halloween time, and Mr. Mays has turned off all the lights in his classroom. The place is now lit up with just a few stray candles and a lone jack-o'-lantern in front of the room. He tells them that their assignment has been exactly why comments. It follows the detailed description by Mr. Mason's friends set out on a road trip around the country after graduating from college, and they eventually make a stop where
Abuse the aim assist.
his friend seems to think is close near here. So they set out towards it, and after some time, Mr. Mays warns all of his students that if they wish to leave the class now, they can, because what comes next is to get some free time off before everyone else, our narrator included, they are completely hooked in. What proceeds is an account of what they found in that old farmhouse. And while I don't know I never read the story, let's just say pretty disturbing. Involves showers, and at the same time, it's extremely mysterious. So much so that no one quite knows how to fully process the story that Mr. Mays has just told them. Mr. Mays seems to be either an extremely good actor or is genuinely scared to talk about the last few events of this tale, something which brought a cold shiver to our narrator. Our narrators have so much appreciation for this tale and the way personally there was more interested in what else Mr. Mays simply winks and tells him that he and his friends were on some drugs, so who knows what exactly happened. The story, however, sticks with our narrator, and he would share it around for a long time after, embellishing details here and there depending on who he was telling the story to. Sometime later, while our narrator is nearing the end of his college days, he finds the time to reach out to Mr. Mays, as he realizes the attention of everyone in the room is what led him down the path that he finds himself in now, wanting to be a writer. He wants to thank Mr. Mays, and what he finds is an old man drunk as he can be, while very different from the image he had in his head about him. To catch up, both being adults now, to the topic of the shower story, a story that he told so many years ago, and Mr. Mays reveals about that story, that it was more than the place that they went to was real. It was more his friend that died that night. Never made it out. Living out. Our narrator was shocked to see the look in Mr. Mays' eyes. This was all so much darker, gruesome, sadder than he had realized. Mr. Mays would die not long after that. This at last, I would say, but now it's our narrators to find out what really is in that old that inspired him so long ago, along with his own friend, the place that haunted his teacher all those years, the shower. Now, all that I just went over was basically the first part of the story. The eventual final part of the tale. The second part, of course, finds our narrator actually exploring the old farmhouse, and again, I won't be spoiling what happens there. And the final part of our story is kind of an aftermath of what happened after the first two parts, as well as a more definitive conclusion to this tale. So, I will say that nowhere during any of the story is the mystery ever laid out flatly, instead existing as something to be interpreted and pondered upon after reading. And like Pen Pal, this story left me for the first time. Something which for me personally says something about the writing and storytelling at hand to get me so the greatest creepypastas of all time. And while I would go into more of the creepy details, I genuinely want you to go read it or listen to me. It's a perfect urban legend, a meta-urban legend, or pasta, if you will. The Dawn of Dream. This entry is one part Rio, one part pasta. Dawn of Your Entity was a sign-off bumper that was shown on Adult Swim from 2005 to 2010, which is awful.
Holy shit.
The point of this bumper was about walking the walk, especially those who stay up too late. Hence why you're early on in the mornings, which is, pretty fucked up, but also very in line with Adult Swim humor of the time. A lot of stuff on Adult Swim had that vibe that when you were a kid, the TV was really clearly telling you, you're not supposed to be watching this shit. Go to bed, you little dork. While at the same time, for someone who, like me, grew up with it, it just sort of has a vibe to it that after a while, late tonight, it just kind of gets cozy, you know, like staying up late watching Adult Swim while you were playing video games or drawing some shit or just kind of laying there, not falling asleep for hours on end. Well, anyway, now that's the true story of The Dog's Your Enemy. It was sort of a creepypasta in itself. It sounds like something that was fake, like a creepypasta, but it was just a TV bumper. Though again, one meant to traumatize children on the same channel that children watch. So, you know, it's pretty fucking funny, if I am gonna lie. But what about the creepypasta version? Well, it kind of goes over what I just went over right now, and then proceeds to tell a story about how the ad went on for longer one night, and that was the last time it was ever shown on Adult Swim, and that when you get past the metal and the rumbling and the metal scraping against metal noises found in the original The Dawn Is Your Enemy audio, what precedes is the sound of someone screaming in a terrifying plight for their life. What? Before the metal starts scraping and tearing against what sounds like flesh, bone, and gushing blood, and the guttural death rattles of people dying underneath it. This is being broadcast to millions of children and adults across America, before it was then cut manually by the Adult Swim / Cartoon Network employees that were there. The question now being, how did the Cartoon Network cover this up, and where did they get the audio, and what have you? So the creepypasta is just sort of an expansion upon the original idea. It's not really all that bad, but this is one of those cases where I think the truth is far more interesting and creepy than fiction. String theory. So from this tier onward, we're going to start getting into some more high concept stories. Starting with this one, which is about a protagonist waking up one morning to see a bunch of braided strings attached around his bedroom. When he heads to school, he notices objects, people, everything is covered and tied in the strings, some more than others. No one seems to notice them though, and for that matter, no one notices him either. That is until he unties all the strings off of his friend Lucy, who then finally notices him and all the strings as well. The pasta then goes on for a little bit with the two of them not being noticed by anyone anymore, and then they watch as the strings tell what's going to happen in the near future. They see how people are connected to other people and their actions. And it's at this point the true horror starts to set in, as our narrator begins to wonder if anyone has control over any aspect of their life, of any of their actions. Does anyone have free will, or is it all just determined already by the strings, thus rendering all actions meaningless, devoid of choice? They then come across a little imp-type creature that seems to be more scared of them than they are of it, and they notice that it has a bunch of string and little nails and tools for putting up the string. He asks if his kind are the ones responsible for the strings, to which he replies yes. Our narrator then asks if they or anyone has any free will, something which only seems to sadden the creature. All of this terrifies Lucy to no end, and the two of them are eventually left speechless to what they have discovered. However, once the two of them fall asleep and awoke the next morning, it seemed as though that our narrator was the only one who remembered this experience. But he no longer could see the strings anymore. The story ending with, quote, over breakfast, Lucy asked me why I looked so pale and nervous. I turned to her and smiled, mumbling something to her about feeling sick. But the truth was, I was scared, because I couldn't see any strings. Wasn't my actions
and may the force be with
were
you.
truly my own. Unquote. So yeah, this one's not full of scary serial killers or experiments. But instead, this one is the fear over how much control we really have over our own actions, if free will truly exists, as well as what I'd like to call our first theoretical information hazard pasta, or a story about someone discovering a dark truth about the government, or general surroundings, or the universe itself, and being burdened with that knowledge. I quite like this pasta. It's short and to the point. It gets its disturbing ideas across pretty well. Well, did you know it? It's one of the other creepypastas that I've read in full on my own YouTube channel once. I wonder if it still holds up. Well, it is a super short one. So why don't we give it a quick read? Well, in 1983, a team of deeply pious scientists conducted a radical experiment in an undisclosed facility. The scientists theorized that a human without access to any substance or waste of God. They believe the five senses clouded our awareness of eternity. A human could actually establish contact with God by thought. An elderly man who claimed to have nothing left to live for was the only test subject to volunteer. To purge him of all his senses, the scientists performed a complex operation in which every sensory nerve connection to the brain was surgically severed. Although the test subject retained full muscular function, he could not see, hear, taste, smell, or feel. With no possible way to communicate with or even sense the outside world, he was alone with his thoughts. Scientists monitored him as he spoke aloud. His state of mind and jumbled slurred sentences that he couldn't even hear. After 4 days, the man claimed to be hearing hushed, unintelligible voices in his head. Assuming that it was an onset of psychosis, the scientists paid little attention to the man's concerns. 2 days later, the man cried that he could hear his dead wife speaking to him, and even more, he could communicate back. The scientists were intrigued, but were not convinced until the subject started naming dead relatives of the scientists. He repeated personal information to the scientists that only their dead spouses and parents would know. At this point, a sizable portion of the scientists left the study. After a week of conversing with the deceased through his thoughts, the subject became distressed, saying the voices were overwhelming. In every waking moment, his consciousness was bombarded by hundreds of voices that refused to leave him. He frequently threw himself against the wall, trying to elicit any pain response. He begged the scientists for sedatives so he could escape the voices by sleeping. This tactic worked for 3 days, until he started having severe night terrors. The subject repeatedly said that he could see and hear the deceased in his dreams. Only a day later, the subject began to scream and claw his non-functional eyes, hoping to sense something in the physical world. The hysterical subject now said the voices of the dead were deafening and hostile, speaking of hell and the end of the world. At one point he yelled, "No heaven, no forgiveness," for 5 hours straight. He continually begged to be killed, but the scientists were convinced that he was close to establishing contact with God. After another day, the subject no longer formed coherent sentences. Seemingly mad, he started to bite off chunks of flesh from his arm. The scientists rushed to the test chamber and restrained him to a table so that he could not kill himself. After a few hours of being tied down, the subject halted his struggle, screaming. He stared blankly at the ceiling. His teardrops silently streaked across his face. For 2 weeks, the subject had to be manually rehydrated due to the constant crying. Eventually, he turned his head, and despite his blindness, made focused eye contact with the scientist for the first time in the study. He whispered, "I have spoken to God. He has abandoned us," and his vital signs stopped. There was no apparent cause of death. Unquote. That's Gateway to the Mind, and it kind of reminds me of the Russian sleep experiment and other experiment-based creepypastas, and it follows a lot of the same sort of stuff those stories tend to do, even ending with a chilling, if not rather cliche, quote from the test subject. Although it is one of the older ones to be fair, so I'll cut some slack there. I really like that in this one, the guy doesn't turn into a monster or get possessed by anything, but simply goes crazy and dies, which is kind of anticlimactic, yes, but also kind of is the only thing that would happen given the experiment, I suppose. This one is often cited as one of the best bosses ever written, and while I do think it is actually very, very good, I'm not sure if I'd put it in my own personal top 10 or 20, but then I have also read and listened to more creepy bosses than the average fellow, so yeah, it is a good one though. One of the best ones to start with in the early days of creepypasta. This creepypasta was often paired with this black and white footage, which was supposed to be the supposed test subject. But if you're a longtime viewer of mine, you might recognize this footage. We created the video for performance art on his website, and here it's just, filtered through black and white. Mariana, Mortigard, Blessport. I already covered this one in detail on my YouTube iceberg, and it's honestly one of the most stupid creepypastas out there. It's about a video, which is this JPEG of this guy tinted red, and it's apparently cursed, and you'll exit the game if you watch the whole thing. There's like a part of the story where a bunch of people watched it, and then they their eyes out, and then they mailed their eyes to YouTube.com. Fucking headquarters. So, yeah, that's it. That's the gist. Next, Plankton got served. Here we have a lost episode creepypasta, but with a bit of a twist, and not by much, but a little. See, this creepypasta opens with the author noting how you, yes, you the reader or listener, has probably heard of lost episode creepypastas, especially that one about Squidward doing something pretty bad, if you know what I mean. But those are all false, unlike this one. Now, this one is the real deal. The pasta goes on to explain, quote, I remember a SpongeBob episode that was altered and still remains in circulation today. This is One Course Meal from Season 7. In the episode, Mr. Krabs finds out that Plankton is horrified of whales and uses it to his advantage. This is one of the least popular episodes of the show due to the dark nature of the episode, even after the episode was heavily altered, unquote. This is an actual episode, by the way, and is indeed often considered one of the worst episodes of the series, mainly because the episode is about Mr. Krabs tormenting Plankton by pretending to be a whale until Plankton attempts to commit exit game by having a car run him over. Yeah, that is pretty mean-spirited and dark for sure. Anyway, our author goes on to note how he watched the original version of this episode, which apparently was quite different from the final episode, and used to be titled Plankton Got Served. He also notes that he managed to see this episode unaltered because it was aired unaltered on Nick's website at the time before it hit TV. He then describes the episode up to the point when Plankton decides to commit exit game, just like in the original episode. But instead of it not happening, Plankton actually gets hit by a bus, and the following is what happened next. Quote, Plankton finds himself standing on a single level, overlooking darkness. In the darkness, he sees whales all looking at him.
There's Chewy cards. For co-op, you're going to want Echoing Roar, and you're only going to use this in a group of people. It extends the duration of Furious Bowcaster by 40% for every kill. Then you want to attack on Impervious, which builds up damage reduction when you do damage of any ability. For example, Furious Bowcaster. So these two go really well together. And ahead of that, you can either put on bonus health, to have bonus health and the damage reduction of Impervious, or you can use Furious Resilience. But Furious Resilience only gives you damage reduction, while Furious Bowcaster is active from blasters, so not actual damage reduction. But yeah, the card setup that I have right now, or you can swap the top left for the bottom right. I'm assuming it's co-op. So I never see you run him even once in each you.
For him to jump down. Plankton looks above, see the light. A light he can scarcely believe. This would seem to represent heaven and hell. Plankton, resigned to his fate, jumps and plunges into the darkness. This is when the episode ends, and the traditional credits for the show are shown, parallel with Plankton's descent into the darkness. Our author then spends the last part of the story swearing up and down that he for sure saw this, and that he doesn't expect people to believe him, but he is nonetheless telling the truth, etc., etc. Now, I will hand it to this creepypasta. It does feel much more reserved than most of them. I suppose in some ways this is because it's based on an actual episode that already had an out-of-character joke/scenario, and so adding to it to make it just a little bit more creepy works a lot better than, other stuff we've covered. That said, the whole trust me guys, I really saw it. I know you read lots of creepypastas, but this isn't one. I'm being serious, guys. This is the truth. Like it or not, it's the truth. It's kind of heavy-handed.
Yeah.
In fact, I almost never like it when creepypastas tell the reader that they know that they read lots of creepypastas.
I know, I've other creepypastas.
But for how many times we're gonna start seeing that here soon, it becomes a cliche in itself, and a rather desperate one at that. Smash noises. These two stories are put together because they are written by the same writing team, that being half always true. And they are also connected because they seem to be stories based around the same neurotic, crazy fellow. The first story, Symmetry, is all about a guy who, ever since he was a kid, has needed everything to be symmetrical. From his hair, his clothes, his surroundings, the way he walks, sleeps, eats, etc.
That stuff.
Ever since he was a kid, one of his eyes are blue and the other green. I suppose you might be guessing where this is going.
Oh.
You see, the lad scoops his green eye out with a scoop and cuts off the optical spools. Thus, his imperfection is gone. But then, he's I'm fucking stupid. Now, he has one hole inside his face.
And now I'm just to make another.
And so, of course, he fixes that. That really is the whole story. But I will say that it's one of the most cringe-inducing stories I've read on the list. Not cringy as in bad, mind you. Cringy as in the descriptions of a man cutting out his eye and the issues that happens with the second one. It makes my skin crawl thinking about it. And certainly reading it. So, your shock value is a pretty good short story. There's not much else to it besides the pure shock value, but I suppose it does what it's trying to do pretty well. Notices, on the other hand, is about a blind man, presumably the same blind man, and his desk job, being able to make emails and such with his voice. But now, suddenly, he can't seem to stand small movements of anything. They're coughing, sneezing, sniffing, mouth-smacking noises. This man's issue with symmetry comes to completely control his life and his thoughts. He gets angry, snaps at people around him, breaks out in hives and rashes, or at least he thinks he is anyway. The noises anger and pester him so much that he actually does believe there's a rash on the back of his neck that's constantly pestering him, which eventually the rash goes to his ears. This eventually leads to the poor fellow stabbing his ears out with their rivals. Description, once again, being unbelievably disturbing and descriptive. The story ends with this man, now blind and without any of his hearing, but finally happy, free from the pestering noises that ailed him. So, those are the two stories, and while I will say the first one's a little more fucked up, mainly because stuff having to do with the eyes just
yikes. But all the same, stories of people's obsessive behavior going to a comical yet frightening extremes is interesting. But again, there isn't much to the stories, mind you. It's just a lot of build up to a really fucked up scene. But at least it doesn't overstay its welcome. Unlike cupcakes. So now it's finally time for a couple of My Little Pony creepypastas. Something which back in 2011 or so, when this first pasta was made, was a rapidly growing fan base that if you frequented near any website that had any kind of art submission of the time, you would see the fans of the series singing its praise, creating fan art, etc. Like it or not, it was everywhere. And it was only going to get everywhere even more as the next couple of years came to pass. This first story is kind of simple in premise. It follows Pony Rainbow Dash, this fast-farming crew who goes to Pinkie Pie's house, this pink one, and is there to help her make some cupcakes. But the twist here is that Pinkie feeds Dash a drugged cupcake so she can tie her down and torture her for the rest of the story, including cutting off her cutie mark, cutting off her wings, eating her freshly cut meat in front of her, etc. All for the sake of slowly killing and mutilating her, and eventually using her flesh for some more sweet cupcakes to feed to some more ponies. This creepypasta is almost exclusively a long, drawn-out torture scene. And I guess it's pretty fucked up, you know? It's meant to shock the reader with it being innocent characters being slowly tortured, and one of them is like a psychopath and what have you. But I'll be honest, maybe it's because I'm not a pony, and I'm, you know, not really familiar or much of a fan of My Little Pony in general. But beyond the basic lore, this one is little for me. It got super boring halfway through.